Hello and welcome Australia to the technology improved BAP. We have a full complement of BAPeteers, 2 on site, 1 in the ether of the Google Hangouts.
Yeah, virtually attending is Jason.
I'm your senior rate correspondent.
Whoa, hang on. Your volume, which was historically perfectly fine, has dropped right out.
Oh, that would be my fault. So what I do is I'll put his volume back up.
Yeah, you hit the fader.
I faded you and the intro soundtrack out.
Because everything's going to the same channel.
This is what I'm used to, this level of professionalism.
Well, I like this ability now because when I don't agree with what you're saying, I can just move
move the fader down. Like,
Oh,
sorry,
what was that,
Jace,
Jason?
go on mute.
That is Mike and call the security guards.
Yeah,
Your argument's is lacking clarity.
we might have to get some sort of dedicated channel set up for the dial-in versus the music. Like run the music in on a separate input.
Yes, I should be able to do that. I believe this deck
On the
has
upside,
lots
the
of bits
music
and
was
pieces.
coming through loud and clear for me for the first time.
It's
Good to hear,
quite
good to
handy
hear.
because normally when we start the show, you and I will just be talking shit, not realizing Franco's broadcasting because we can't hear the music. Whereas today, we shut up.
So, gentlemen, this is the douchebag filter. I made an attempt to watch a Dean recommendation of Everything Sucks.
Yep.
And I have to say, it just didn't work for me.
Didn't work for you? Did you like Freaks and Geeks at all or net?
I haven't watched Freaks Geeks. I
Right.
think my problem with Everything Sucks was I thought it was well done, but I wasn't a child during the 90s. And I think that's why I didn't make that connection.
Yeah, okay.
Ah, right. Okay.
I was-
That
I
might
was-
explain why Mari does appreciate it more than I do as well.
I just couldn't relate. Like, I love the music, but, I was coming out of high school at that in 92. So,
Right.
I imagine if you're in, at the end of primary school, going into high school, might resonate a bit more with some of the references and so forth.
Maybe. I mean,
Gay people were still in the closet back then. When I was in primary school.
for me growing up as a young black kid in America, the show really spoke to me.
So,
Yeah,
but
fair enough. Look, not for everyone.
I
But,
thought, don't get me wrong, it was. I know Helen bowed out after the first 10 minutes. I stuck into it for 3 episodes, and I didn't think it was bad. I thought it was well done. I just couldn't quite get into it.
didn't get it.
I need some aliens.
Yeah, look, it was a lot like Stranger Things without the upside down
Mm.
for me, and a better soundtrack because more stuff I loved. But,
Yeah, the soundtrack was great. I think it was well done, but yeah, I'm not dissing it. I still
well,
reckon
I
it's
have
worth
another recommendation.
Hit
though.
me.
So have you guys heard of Counterpart?
No.
No.
Are you guys at all familiar with Fringe?
Yes.
Vaguely.
The concept of, right, where there's this world and then there's another one
Oh yes.
parallel to it, and then there are connections and people pass through. Well, Counterpart is one of those shows, but without the Walter and Pacey from Dawson's Creek characters. So it's got J.K. Simmons playing 2 lead roles. Both of them are him, I guess, but one from each universe. And in one, he's a bit of a quiet, demure, bookish man, and the other one, he's like a hardcore spy. And it's really good. I've only seen 1 episode, and I liked it.
I like the sound of that. There was possibly a cooler version of me, which wouldn't be hard in a parallel universe.
Yeah.
I'd like to meet that.
It
Cooler
somehow
version.
makes it all worthwhile, doesn't it, Frank?
Oh, it gives me heart that I can be a better person, a cooler person. I just need guidance from the cooler version of me.
Well, and the cooler version of him does front up and does sort of get involved in his life, and
It does cool things.
just basically causes chaos. He's a spy, so he's like the Jason Bourne type of spy, not a James Bond drinking and playing baccarat. He's just like fucking murdering people.
So neither version of which are realistic in the real world.
Well, yeah, no,
But
it's
hey, different type of spies.
different types of spies. But look, I guess we'll give it a go. I'm gonna keep watching it and see if it gets any better because the pilot was pretty good.
Is this a BBC or American production?
It's an American production, but it's set in East Germany, so maybe it is partially funded by someone else.
It's called Counterpart.
It's called Counterpart.
I shall give it a
It's
try.
good so far. It's good so far.
What sort of was it being set in present day? Sort of.
I'm not 100% sure. I think it's set in the 80s because I think they refer to it as East Germany.
Oh, they
at
do.
one
Okay,
point.
so it'd have to be
So I think it's set in the 80s. But then again, I don't necessarily know which one is our, because it's 2 parallel universes. Maybe
and they're slightly different.
the
Neither
main
of
one
which
we're
may be
watching
ours.
is not even ours.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay.
But it's pretty good, and obviously J.K. Simmons is fucking fantastic, and the way he manages to pull off two different versions of himself, I like watching. Reminds me a bit of Orphan Black in that way,
I was
but
just about
with an
to say
old
that.
white dude playing the lead. So if you like white men doing other people's shit and appropriating
if you
their
thought Orphan
culture,
Black was just missing a little bit of white man aggrievement,
yeah,
then this is the show
then
for
this
you.
is the show for you. If Fringe had too many female characters in it, this is the show for you.
I potentially have a controversial recommendation for the show. The Queer Eye reboot.
Oh, really? On Netflix?
Yes.
I saw that pop up, and I in my head I was like, was that show a product of its time? And can they recapture it in a reboot? But they have, obviously.
They have in a different manner. So let me put it out there straight away. It is girlfriend friendly. So
I think the first one was girlfriend friendly as well.
Even more so this one. Well, I didn't have to ask twice for Helen what would she like to watch.
Right.
It's like Queer Eye, and because especially after the third episode of Everything Sucks.
Right.
When I asked, well, what do you want to watch? We went straight to Queer Eye.
Fair enough.
So, I mean, their pitch of the reboot has been, the first series was, the first incarnation of the show was about tolerance. This incarnation is about acceptance. And, they still have this sort of, the aspects of the first show where and shows like it of having a remake of someone, and everyone loves a remake of someone.
Was the first one about tolerance? I thought it was about giving men with no dress sense via the medium of homosexuals with dress sense.
Well, yeah, intrinsically it was, but I like
because I mean, for me, I remember watching that show, I was like, those characters didn't actually have to be gay; they just were.
Yeah, true.
It was just guys with fashion sense giving guys without fashion sense advice.
It could have been any flamboyant men with fashion sense.
Yeah, they didn't have. I mean, that was, it's fine that they were, and there were 5 of them.
But no, I know what Franco means. I mean, it was presenting them as the sort of the central piece of a TV show and creating acceptance through or tolerance through
just
exposure,
being there.
I guess.
Yeah, exposure.
I mean, to be fair, it was really playing towards stereotypes, though, wasn't it?
Very much.
Yeah, no, it's had some deeply
It's
problematic.
like if I was a gay man who wanted to be accepted or even just tolerated, maybe showing that there were more types of gay men other than just flamboyant fashionistas would have been good too.
Baby steps, Dean. Baby steps.
But look at the time that came out in 2003, where I think that was the same time or era of Will and Grace. So having prominent gay culture right in your face on TV wasn't.
Now there's an example of a TV show that has no place in the present day. Will and Grace.
They rebooted that.
Yeah, I know. It has no place in the present day.
I really liked the original Will and Grace.
I never liked the original that much, to be honest.
I
But going back and trying to watch, even my partner's a big fan of the original, and she couldn't stomach the reboot.
What is the secondary female's character name? She's Ron Swanson's wife in real life. I can't remember her name. Karen.
Yes.
Karen made that show for me.
Yes, indeed.
She was just such a prick all the time. I enjoyed that.
Oh, and the other gay male character in there, supporting character.
That's true. The 2 leads were probably the weakest part of the show.
They were boring, but the other 2. But swinging back to Queer Eye, whereas they played very much on the camp aesthetic of a very niche element of gay culture. They don't play on that so much, and like they've toned that down to what I would consider they've toned it down to some extent, except for one of the members, one of the 5. The rest aren't that over the top. Yeah, maybe you might say their dress sense is a bit more flashy than the average male, but in terms of their personality, they've really played down the camp aspect. They do tackle some real issues though as part of the show. It's not the main focus of the show necessarily. So, for instance, this is the interesting thing was the original show was set in New York, whereas this is set in Atlanta, Georgia.
Oh, really?
Sorry, Georgia. Yes, makes for a very interesting viewing. So
that is different because the South is not exactly as accepting of alternate lifestyles as New York City.
And they really, I'm not going to use the word challenge, but they don't hide from it, and they do pick makeover individuals who are going to prompt that sort of conversation. So in episode 4, one of the people that they're going to do a makeover is a white cop. And as they're going in, they get pulled over by his friend, and they didn't realize it.
This
and
is terrible.
the black member Karamo, who was driving, you can visibly see he's tensing up and freaked out by the situation.
Yeah, right.
And they do talk about that throughout the show. And there's a awkward conversation where it's just Karamo and the guy they're doing the makeover on, the cop, where they're sort of brushing on the subject of relations between police officers and the black community. And obviously,
I get I mean, this is probably being me buying into stereotypes a little bit, but I get the feeling that people in the black community and almost everyone else in Atlanta, Georgia, would probably have had. I don't think it would just be white cops you'd be worried about sometimes. I think it'd be like older white dude, probably racist.
Yeah, and they don't shy away from it. So it's interesting to see the body language of this interaction by these between these two guys, where it's obviously tense, and yet even though they've said nice pleasantries between them, you can see, well, this is really giving showing the tension between these two.
So the cop is looking tense.
Both of them are looking uncomfortable. They're trying to
What's
make
going on in the scene? Is it like the black man's giving him a shave with like a cutthroat razor?
No, not like. So the black guy, whose profession was as a counsellor, so he knows how to broach these topics with people. So he says, look, when we were first coming down here, I wasn't looking forward to this. I didn't really want to do it because, and they just talked about how they felt about it from their sides of the fence, and how this sort of dialogue can help. But they don't try and overplay it like they've solved the world's problems.
No, because it's about fashion. So the white cop, by the end of the show, he was like, "I'm okay having a gay black man dress me."
No, well,
and here's the weird part: the white cop was more afraid of black people than gay people.
That was not the message.
No, I was just curious. Like, did he have issues just with the black man?
I think he was. No, it was more being confronted by the negative perception that the African American community has against the police. So he, and like and they sort of traded conversation stories where he was telling the story about another member of his force had kicked a handcuffed guy in the head, and he didn't think.
Was it a story he told and then laughed about?
No, he said that wasn't acceptable.
Like they had a good little joke about it. Remember that time we kicked that guy in the head when he was in handcuffs?
And like Karamo said, "Oh, I'm glad you told me that story. It gives me an insight that not everyone approves of that sort of behavior."
I mean, it's nice that he told the story, but did he report the fucker for it?
Well, they didn't go to that level.
Because, that kind of behavior within the police department shouldn't be happening. And if you disapprove with it, you should probably say something about it.
It was an investigative journalism.
From another podcast where they were talking about it as well. And someone raised this little thing. They couldn't broach this subject without letting them have the Blue Lives Matter sort of perspective come in a little bit. And it was all about exactly what Dean said. Did he actually do anything about the violence he witnessed? No.
I mean, let's be honest though. I think that police
they got to start somewhere.
Yeah, I think that the police work a really fucking hard job, and they put their lives in harm's way every day to protect the community. I'm not saying Blue Lives Matter, but I'm saying that they have a shitty job.
Yeah.
And they don't get a lot of respect a lot of the time, and they are important.
I wouldn't say lack
of
respect
society
is something they suffer from in the US.
I think it is.
No way. Not. I mean, you got at least half the population that probably backs them almost unconditionally on most things. That's why Black Lives Matter has found it so hard to get any traction.
Well, I mean, okay, fair enough. But when I lived there, I certainly felt afraid of police, and I wasn't the only person that maybe didn't like having them around.
No, I can understand.
And I know I made a joke earlier about growing up as a black man in America.
Probably a little bit of a difference between fear and respect, but.
Well, there's a bit of a difference between fear and respect. I mean, you might fear Saddam Hussein, but you probably didn't respect him.
But, I mean, you listen to... I mean, all the people that voted for Trump are all Blue Lives Matter, that sort of type.
Look, that's a gross generalization. I'm sure
it is
some
a
of them
gross
are.
generalization, but, I mean, that's what we're talking in at the moment, right? You're talking about them not being respected, and I'm saying, well, indications are that they are fairly respected.
What indications? You're using generalizations.
Yeah.
Yeah, fair enough. Okay, look, agree to disagree.
Anyway.
I still find it funny. I feel like that's a bit of a... haven't even seen the episode, but I'm worried that it's a bit of a fake confrontation that they've put on for the show to sort of make it look like...
It was started by one of those, like, them getting pulled over by the cop was one of those sort of practical jokes, which was almost just on the nose, if you know what I mean.
Well, I'm saying,
fuck around with
far
that.
be it
When you know the result that it's going to produce, especially.
Yeah, far be it from me to suggest this, but I feel like Queer Eye is a little bit staged sometimes.
Yeah.
Of course, I think what made this interesting for me is obviously the producers are trying to stage certain situations, but there's human reactions that you can't stage necessarily. You can stage a situation, but you can't stage how people will react in that stage situation. So that's what I found interesting, was that there was some real emotion, real tension in those stage situations, which was interesting to see. I'm not saying this is investigative journalism where they've really getting to the root of these issues, but it's interesting to see that it's not totally superficial.
Well, it's a sort of controversial concept which has come on to like a mainstream TV show, so it's kind of good.
Well, the other one was when they were redoing doing a makeover of a fundamental Christian, and one of the who they call the Fab Five grew up as a fundamental Christian.
Yep.
And so he obviously moved away from that
so
to extent.
They staged a fake abortion for them or something like that?
No, nothing like that. But he was fully into that evangelical Christian life, where he went to church every day, was a deacon and all that.
He was a deacon?
So he was right into it.
Wow.
So, but obviously self-loathing and hating at the same time, because he had this other side to him of who he was. But
I imagine that is unfortunately true for a lot of gay men that grew up in that era who were in the church.
So he understood the mindset of this guy who they were, and he was in the same situation.
But does he though?
He wasn't so keen on doing this. But anyway,
because I don't understand the mindset, right? You know, when we had the marriage debate here, and there are all these people, nearly 40-something% of the population coming out and saying, look, the Bible says that's wrong, we can't support this. And in my head, I'm like, so underage drinking, sex out of wedlock, etc., drugs, you're fine with all of that you engage in, but not fine with consenting adults who...
You need to draw the line somewhere, Dean.
Yeah, I know. They just draw lines in funny places sometimes,
Yeah. Funny lines where they're told to draw the line, because these people don't go
to church. But they're told explicitly that sex before marriage isn't cool, and there are very, very few Australian Christians who do draw that line.
Well, it's easy to draw a line when it has no impact on your life in any way, shape or form.
Yeah. Well, that's what I'm trying to say. Like, how do you get in that mind space? Because I feel like that's a weird mind space to be like, oh, all this stuff in the book that applies to me doesn't apply, but this other thing that doesn't affect me, totally the word of God.
Totally willing to put my foot down on it because it doesn't affect me in any way, shape or form.
No, or Barnaby Joyce, right? Oh, hey, sanctity of the family is important. What? Not being my missus? Yeah, but that's also fairly sanctimonious.
Well, it depends on when you actually pinpoint when she was and when she wasn't. In terms of, was I using public funds to support this
partner?
Relationship? No, she definitely wasn't my partner.
Yeah.
But when it becomes to deflecting the media questions, she was my partner, I'm bringing a new child into the world.
Yeah, I feel that definition or that piece of legislation where it says you can't spend it on your partner needs to be reformed a little bit.
Tightened up?
Well, because what he's basically saying is you could get a prostitute on the public purse, take her to a hotel, knob her, and it's fine.
As long as you ask her what her position on the freeway extension is.
Yeah, well, as long as she doesn't work
totally
for
not
you.
your partner. She doesn't work for you. She's not your partner. Totally a fair use of public funds.
For that hour, she's in your employ.
Yeah, I guess.
I see. Then, much like his accuser in WA, he's sexually harassing her then, probably.
Well, here's the thing, right? What if Tony Abbott gets a prostitute to sleep with Barnaby Joyce? Barnaby Joyce gets one to sleep with, Tony, as an example, right?
Oh, no.
So they're not sleeping with their employee. No. They're sleeping with a constituent.
I'm not even going to try and unpack that.
Yeah, I don't know where I'm going with that either.
So we're moving into newsies with hits?
No. I mean, we can.
Have you got more douchebag filter?
I mean, a little bit, but...
Go for it.
It's not like the end of the world.
Anyway, Queer Eye. Good. Watch it. It's good
Have
fun.
you seen the new Joel McHale show starring Joel McHale on Netflix?
I saw it. I moved on from it, but I was curious that anyone would name their show starring their name in namesake as the show title.
I liked Community a lot, and I watched the pilot of the Joel McHale show starring Joel McHale. And I got to admit, because I was a big fan of Chelsea on Netflix, which has been cancelled, and then this is their new talk show. Not a fan.
Oh, so don't watch it?
No, it's fine. It's fine. It's a lot like The Soup was on whatever network that was originally on, John McHale's last thing. And the segue for this was there was a piece on there that had Carson Creeley from the original Queer Eye cast featured in the video clip, which I thought would have made a good segue from the Queer Eye talk, but unfortunately we moved on to Barnaby, and that was my fault.
He's always sticking his nose in where it doesn't belong, Barney.
Yeah. But I think it's interesting. It's interesting. I do enjoy the way he mocks the media, but geez, this episode had so many references to internal Netflix stuff, which is a problem I had with Chelsea as well. Like, every time they have a guest on or something, it's a plug for another Netflix show.
Oh, really?
And it's a little bit like
just
advertisement.
overt product placement almost, kind of.
They even mock it in this show. They play the Netflix noise every time they talk about it. But it's too much for me. I couldn't deal with it, and it felt a little bit like he was selling out. And I know it's a job, he's taking money, and everyone sells out for the job they do. But
I don't think he had a reputation as some kind of anti-establishment
he
comic
didn't.
anyway. Really,
he didn't. Did you see that movie about the guy who founded National Lampoon? It was called something tragedy, quick and brutal tragedy thing. Anyway, he was in that playing Chevy Chase, and he was fucking awesome pretending to be Chevy Chase.
Oh, right. Okay.
The other thing I watched on Netflix recently was Leonardo DiCaprio's documentary called After the Flood, which is a environmental thing, because he was the UN envoy for peace on the environment for 2 years, and this documentary was filmed during the Obama administration, and it's really fucking heartbreaking even watching it with that lens. But then you see that the Paris Accords got walked away from by America, and Trump's rolled all this stuff back, and it is really good, but really also just soul crushing to watch. And Leo, I think, could make a good documentary guy. I didn't used to like.
He was narrating it, and
he was narrating it, and he was going to all these places. He went he went to the North Pole. He was telling some stories about when they were filming The Revenant, and they were filming that up in Canada originally, and then there was a unseasonably hot winter, so they ran out of snow, and they had to fly the entire production crew down to the southern tip of Argentina to get snow, and that was the only place on the continent of America that still had snow when they needed it to finish filming the show.
Oh, no.
And he was talking about that in the context of there's going to come a point in time by the time he has kids, because he has no kids yet, where snow is something that maybe they won't get to see. And it was pretty amazing to see that. And he was also he was up in Greenland, and it's really worth watching. Just like he literally goes to all these places that affect. He spends some time in India. He spends time in the Maldives. It's not the Maldives, but one of those island nations and stuff as well, and like just goes all around these places that are currently dealing with all the crises to talk stuff through. And then they show his speech at the UN when the Paris Accords are signed, where he's basically calling everyone out, saying this isn't enough. Like, you haven't put any actual. There's no. If anyone walks away from this, it's not. There's no punishments. There's no actual enforcement on these targets. This is not enough. You are the last people. You are our last best hope for the planet, and you need to do more. And then, as we all know, America walked away from it. But it was really fucking powerful, I thought. And I say this as someone who generally doesn't enjoy Leonardo DiCaprio.
Well, that's the thing. My back instantly gets up when I hear, movie stars being given undeserved political credibility.
Yeah, mine too. And the reason I like this documentary is because he starts at the beginning, and he basically confronts that point. He's like, I got named as the UN envoy for peace on the environment, which maybe wasn't the best choice, but I'm going to spend this next 2 years getting the information I want. And he films this documentary while he's actually getting an education. And there's a couple of scenes early on when he was 25 and he got to meet who was the dude who lost to George Bush the first time, who did The Inconvenient Truth, whose name
Kerry?
is Bob
Al Gore.
Al Gore, yeah. There's some scenes of Leonardo DiCaprio at age 25 meeting Al Gore and talking about the environment with Al Gore then, and he's just like, I had no idea what he was talking about.
That's good that he confronts that criticism.
It's really interesting to watch anyway, and it's only like an hour and a half. But I thought it was quite worthwhile.
Well, last week I talked about Dirty Money, the Netflix series.
Yep.
And I watched what I consider... Well, I haven't watched the Canadian Maple Heist yet episode, but
What?
I watched the one about Valiant. And I highly recommend that, especially if you want to see how disgusting humanity can be, and also want to get a broader view of what Martin Shkreli was about. So Martin Shkreli was just the tip of the iceberg in terms of exposing what pharmaceutical companies were doing, in particular Valiant, in terms of buying out old drug patents and then ridiculously jacking up the price. So
yep.
highly recommend that one. Particularly, like the prime example they gave was a drug called Cypherine, which has a low patient base, which deals with a condition called Wilson's disease, which basically your body can't process copper, so it just builds up. So up until recently, it was costing people who had Wilson's disease $30 a month for their treatment.
Yep.
Then all of a sudden, over a period of 8 years, it jacks up to $27,000.
See, this is an example of why America's healthcare system is terrible, though.
And well, they explain how this situation manifests, and you can understand, because it sounds ridiculous. How could this happen? And basically, because most of the time the individual isn't charged that, it's through the insurance companies, and the insurance companies, because they're behemoths, they don't necessarily waste time in noticing these specific instances of being looted by these companies. So, if you want to get your head around how it all came about, how it got exposed, highly recommend it. Really well done.
But even holding the patent on a drug that is old, and I thought once things become generically manufactured, you're shit out of luck.
Yeah, but that's part of the There's been legislation passed through which extend the life of the patents, and also they gave them certain loopholes, which meant they could go back, revisit a drug, and change it slightly.
Yeah. I'm aware of that one. If you do
they game the system
new
so
research
they
into
never have to.
Well, the problem with Cypherine is it has such a low patient base that it's not in anyone's interest to go through the FDA trials that you have to go through to get your product onto market for something that has very limited profitability.
Yeah.
So basically you have a monopoly player who's protected by not necessarily a high barrier to market, but it's just not worth anyone's while getting in there.
Yeah, okay. Well, it remains on my list. I've added it to my Netflix list to watch, but I only have so much faith in humanity on any given day. And I need to find a day where it hasn't already been depleted over the course of my existence before I watch something like that. Much like Leonardo's thing, which basically had me lamenting the species from which we come.
Jason, what about you? What to round off the douchebag filter?
The only thing I really watched was something I've talked about before, was the Dirk Gently Holistic Detective Agency.
That also remains on my list. It's supposed to be very funny.
Yeah, it is. It's hard to explain it, and that's why I wouldn't really do much more than just say it's actually worth watching. And it still has a lot of Douglas Adams humor, but there's the actors that come into it bring their own style and everything, and it's really well done.
Yeah, right.
The stories are fucking out there. but they're funny. They are amusing.
They're so out there dropping F-bombs.
So, lads, newsies, what have we got?
We all know what we're going to talk about, don't we?
Barney.
Yeah.
He's gone.
For the second week in a row, Barney will dominate the show.
Mm-hmm.
Which is pretty much what he's done with the news cycle as well, in general, right?
More than he wanted to.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, it's probably the most interesting political story we've had in quite a while. I mean, Malcolm's not really one to provide much in the way of riveting entertainment.
Yeah, he's lasted way longer than he should have, purely based on he's so boring.
Yeah. I think that might be a strategy. I'm going to talk about this a little later on.
Okay. We'll park that.
I think it might be a strategy. Anyway, to just recap what we're talking about, I guess we should point out that on Friday, Barnaby Joyce announced he was going to be resigning on Monday. So he hasn't yet officially resigned. That'll come tomorrow at some point.
He just wanted one more weekend with the expense account, right?
Well, I think it was more a case of by the time he made up his mind and he was on vacation, he couldn't get to Canberra on time to actually be present to resign. I think he has to go before the Parliament to do it. I can't back that up, to be honest. But I imagine when he stands down from the party room, there'll be a vote for who the new leader is. And he wants to give everyone at least some time to work out, A, who to vote for, although the Nationals typically only put up one candidate, and B, who's going to get the hat of Charisma +2. Do we even know another National? Yeah. I don't. Don't you? Unless it's someone
Matt Canavan, who was, I just thought was a liberal.
Involuntary Italian.
Oh, right. Okay.
George Christensen.
See, I just thought he was a liberal.
Mr. Do You Feel Lucky Punks?
Those are the two I know of.
Bridget McKenzie, Deputy Leader of the National Party.
Oh, I didn't know her at all.
Well, she's been in the news a bit lately because
Lately, and
she's
on the
now
but I didn't know before this incident at all. So.
And Little Proud, what's his name? Can't remember his name. Little Proud, something Little Proud. David, maybe David. No, it might be David Gillespie. Look, there's an assortment of nationals.
I'm pretty impressed that you rattled off a few names, Dean. That's well done.
I am a political nerd, and although we have a show where we talk about politics, unfortunately, my political nerdery goes deeper than that. Anyway, so Barnaby's decided to fall on his sword. So he put a speech out. Oh well, he gave a speech to the media. And I'm going to go on I'm going to go on the board and say I liked it. I know Jason didn't like it as much.
No. As I pointed out to you, I just it's not bad. I think when you said not bad, you meant it better than that. But I went, it's not bad.
You know what is interesting, right? Someone who knows their shit about how to deal with the media is helping him write that speech. It's probably Vicky Campion, his partner, probably. But that speech is
he's getting a lot of late night.
The best Barnaby's ever given. I felt it was amongst the best because normally he's a bit, even with this when he was talking about the weatherboard 9. You know, like
what does that mean?
He likes to throw in these.
No, it's weatherboard and iron.
Weatherboard and iron.
Yes. Right. There was a minor.
I watched that video twice, and I
heard weatherboard and iron both times. Yeah, yes. He likes to throw in these little colloquialisms that I don't necessarily always understand. Yes. But weatherboard and iron makes a lot more sense.
And what does it mean?
House. Weatherboard house with an iron roof.
Weatherboard and iron. Okay.
Like I used to live in, on Berwick Street in the city, not in the country, New England. Look, I thought it was amongst the best speeches he's given. I like the way he somewhat valiantly tried to highlight that this isn't supposed to be about the politician. It's about representing your constituents, and that he recognised that his actions were detracting from that. Like he was unable to get clarity of air. He couldn't represent his constituents, so he was standing aside. I actually liked the way he did that.
So he wasn't taking any responsibility for his actions, technically.
I think he was. He was saying that I can't continue in my role representing New England because of all of this that's going on.
Because he was blaming it on the media. Yeah, it was.
Yeah, that sounds like
all this.
There's issues which I can't control.
You guys need to pick who's talking when, because that just came into my.
I haven't been saying much so far.
Well, I don't know what you said. Did you say the same thing?
Go ahead, Jason.
Frank was talking about cantaloupe.
All right. Basically, to me, it sounded like he was identifying there were issues going around, interfering with his business of government. That doesn't sound like you're taking responsibility for them.
That is, unfortunately, the line immediately following the one I was talking about. But you're right. He did definitely blame the media for the litany of issues. And to be fair...
Let's not be too fair.
No, look, I try and be balanced with my critique of the government, right? To be fair, Barnaby had the National Party itself leak against him. So there was a complaint about sexual assault put forward to the National Party to investigate.
I'm not entirely sure it was leak against him, because this was something that the accuser did not want leaked.
I know. This is the point I'm making.
But, I mean, this leaking actually allowed him to get ahead of it.
Feel free to trample on it. Trample on my point.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. I mean, it's a show where we all trample on each other's points all the time. No, Barnaby made a point where he's saying, look, the media, blah, 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 litany of issues, and he pointed out that the leaking doesn't help, it just destroys governments, it brings people down. I think that it was interesting that Barnaby Joyce, who is arguably the most popular member of the National Party internally and externally, had someone within the party leak against him.
I agree.
I'm not entirely certain it was someone that leaked against him, though. I think he might have been happy with the leak himself.
No, I don't think he was.
The individual, and I'm not going to say their name because it's against their wishes, had actually reported the incident directly to the National Party
to investigate privately.
I know she had reported directly, and she's very upset that it.
Exactly.
What is worse than that for me was on the weekend, on yesterday, Saturday, the Australian newspaper published her name.
Yes.
So we had someone whose consent was violated when she was assaulted, allegedly.
Yeah.
Whose consent was then violated by the media when they published her name. So trust issues probably going to abound for this poor woman.
Yeah.
I think Barnaby was a bit angry about that. I don't think he was. He did refer it to the police, which is one way of just getting
No, he
shut up and
didn't
go away.
refer it. He asked that it be referred to the police.
Yeah.
He has not referred it to the police.
Okay.
So, I mean, there's a big difference there, right?
Well,
he's not calling the cops on this. He's asking that someone else do it.
Okay. Well,
And in the meantime, he doesn't have to answer any questions because it's going to be referred to the police.
Well, no, I don't think the woman is wanting that to be referred to.
No, that's right. But in the meantime, he can say he doesn't have to answer questions because he's asking that it be referred to the police, and that's exactly what he said in his speech.
yeah, I think,
He
I
won't
mean,
be speaking about it.
I imagine that point would be made by almost any politician.
No, absolutely. But the thing is, it hasn't been referred to the police. He has quite happily said that he wants it referred to the police and therefore absolved himself of having to talk about it at all, answer any questions or anything.
Okay.
So that's fine, but let's just
I mean,
be aware that...
I mean, if someone... Would you ever refer a case involving yourself to the police?
No, but I wouldn't ask for it to be referred either.
I don't know. I can see a situation where someone's slandering you or you know, throwing
Well,
around...
no, if they're slandering me, then if they're legitimately slandering, then yeah, I will refer it to the police. But if it's not, if I don't want it referred to the police, I won't refer it.
Yeah. Okay. I feel like it's hard to verify your innocence in this instance.
But he's not interested in clarifying the issue at all. Is what I'm saying. He doesn't want to talk about it. Doesn't want to clarify it.
No, he doesn't.
He just wants to go away.
I think he does. I mean, earlier last week when Malcolm brought it up on the Wednesday when he was talking about Barnaby needing to take some time to think about it, at that point it was very evident that Barnaby was like, "Can everyone just stop talking about this so it goes away and gets out of the news cycle?" I definitely think that was the case, but I also am somewhat aware that, you know, Barnaby's got 4 kids who probably hate him right now, and another one on the way he doesn't want to have living under this cloud of shame. I'm willing to give him something of the benefit of the doubt here to say that, hey, maybe Barnaby really just wants to spare everyone, including himself, but like everyone, a little bit of fucking media attention.
Yeah, I don't know about that. Like, no, I'm sure there's an aspect
if he resigned out of public life entirely, then fair call. But he's not going to do that, is he?
Not yet.
I think. Although I'm sure there's some part of Barnaby that does want to spare Vicky Campy and some of the torture of being under the public scrutiny of the press. But I think
more his kids, man.
I think his biggest issue is now that the light of attention is on him, a lot of things are coming out that he doesn't want coming out, i.e. the rent he was getting for free for 6 months from a supporter, his interesting property purchases, and I think the more light that's shone on what he's been doing in government, it's making him a lot more uncomfortable, and I think that's the prime motivator to wanting to get out of the public spotlight.
Yeah, maybe.
And you got to remember, this guy's been a media whore in the past anyway. I mean, he's the guy that held Johnny Depp's dog to ransom.
Interesting that
he's a media whore.
That's what he's world famous for.
Yeah, interesting that the Murdoch press turned on him so fiercely though.
Well,
because Barnaby's been one of their main. I don't want to say defenders, but you know, like he is frequently published in the Murdoch press in very positive light up until very recently.
And for the Australian to turn against him, it makes you wonder who he's annoyed to have the Australian go against him.
Yeah, I don't know what's going on there. I'm guessing that he's now seen as a liability and they have to be rid of him. But I'll tell you who he's not happy with. Malcolm Turnbull. So when Barnaby announced his resignation on Friday, he called Matthias Cormann, acting Prime Minister, to inform him that he was going to be standing down on Monday. And that was the only Liberal member he called. He did not call Malcolm Turnbull in Washington. Malcolm found out when the media asked him questions about Barnaby's resignation. Malcolm's exact words were, he made the right decision. So Malcolm's now gone from having one backyard sniper crawling around the bushes of the backbenches to at least 2.
Especially when Barnaby's come out saying, I'm not going to snipe from the backbench. That instantly means I'm going to do exactly the opposite of that statement.
Yeah, I'm not going to snipe from the backbench. Hey, Tone? Hey? Hey, buddy?
You got Tone on the spotting telescope.
You got me some pointers? You call out the targets. I'll fire. Yeah, that'll be interesting to see. So the other interesting thing that happened over the weekend was that Bridget McKenzie, the deputy leader of the National Party, came out to urge that only one candidate stand, because the Nationals have this running tradition, I guess you'd call it, where they only ever have one person nominate for the leadership. So there was 3 names in the mix. There was Michael McCormick, there was David Gillespie, and David Littleproud. And David Gillespie has withdrawn his name, leaving. David Gillespie is an assistant minister for, I want to say, education, something like that. Leaving Michael McCormack, who is the standing minister for Veterans Affairs, as the only one who has announced his candidacy. The other name I mentioned, David Littleproud, he is a junior minister. This is his first term in Parliament. I think he's ex-pharmaceutical industry. And he hasn't yet confirmed whether he will or will not nominate. But it'll be interesting if he does, because who the fuck's going to vote for someone with 6 months' experience? I don't know. And I feel like if you're playing the Conservative base, Veterans Affairs Minister, you can't get a better sell than that.
Yeah. Well, and more than 6 months service.
Yeah. Yeah, more than 6 months service. Currently the Minister for Veterans Affairs. I think that's a shoo-in, but we will see. The other particularly funny piece of media I saw was George Christensen, who I might point out is a member of the unified LNP from Queensland, right, where the Liberal Party and the National Party are conjoined. They're one party.
Oh.
George came out and said that since they're getting a new leader, that it was time to scrap the coalition agreement as it stands and for the National Party to only guarantee confidence and supply. Everything else be taken on its merits.
Not a bad statement.
Yeah. When questioned about this, Bridget McKenzie, the deputy leader for the National Party, fronted the media and said, "Well, George says a lot of things, doesn't he?"
How does that change the current agreement? What are they?
Oh, because the last agreement was signed by Barnaby Joyce. So now that Barnaby is no longer the leader of the National Party, they have to re-sign.
Yeah, but I'm wondering, how will this new agreement differ from the old? If they're
I don't know.
What else are they guaranteeing?
Mackenzie's come out and said, look, we should just re-sign it as it stood. We made it an agreement in good conscience and we should stand by this. But there are other members of the National Party, notably crazy Christensen. In my head, I've got a game like Hungry Hippos, but with little George Christensens and you slapping on their fat asses as they digest. So Crazy Christensen has come out and said he wants to basically, he thinks the party should change things up and get a better deal for rural Australia. Now, it is, the party could do that because obviously they have to renegotiate now that Barnaby has left. Barnaby was one of the ones allegedly who was forcing the issue of the marriage debate. Well,
okay.
So the coalition basically had no choice because the agreement they signed with the National Party under Tony Abbott and with Barnaby Joyce said there will be no action on this unless we have a plebiscite.
So hold on, let's unpack that for a moment. Hold on, you're saying that Barnaby was the main protagonist of double downing or forcing the issue of the agreement between
Barnaby
the
and
Nationals?
Tony. Yeah, Barnaby and Tony signed an agreement. The reason that there is a coalition government, and that is a part of the agreement, that there will be no private members bill unless there is a plebiscite.
Wow. I'm confused because it seems like Barnaby has issues
with the standard traditional
marriage.
family. I know it does, doesn't it? I don't know. I think he just doesn't like Queer Eye. Maybe they should give him a makeover.
I mean, going by...
He needs one.
I'm wondering, and I'm just going to
He
throw
looks like
this
a
out
toad.
there, that perhaps Barnaby isn't that vested in the idea that marriage is a sanctity between purely a man and a woman, or cares that much about it. I can imagine that he represents the idea of it because his constituents are favourable to that idea. But him as an individual, maybe not so much. Maybe he's open to the idea of different forms of union being granted.
Yeah.
The sanctity.
A lot of the time when you hear people who were on the traditional family side of the argument for marriage equality, a lot of their arguments seem to stem from, but what if they raise children? The problem with that is that's already happening and it's not a problem. A, it's not a problem, and B, it was already happening because gay couples could adopt kids and that's fine. There's no harm there. They could
issue of
go through IVF, they could have kids, it's fine.
Fathers taken out of raising children.
Well, what about the issue of fathers having daughters steal campaign utes and driving around talking over the loudspeakers, bad-mouthing fathers? That's a big issue as well.
Allegedly,
Australians deserve to hear more about.
Mm.
Yeah, no, look, I mean, Barnaby is... He very much lived by the sword. And as a Conservative politician, he may be about to die by that sword. I think he will be back. I think he's fine. I think he will return.
He will. I don't know if he'll ever get to the level of Deputy Prime Minister or Prime Minister.
Pretty sure Bill Shorten had a kid with one of his staffers.
He did?
So, he's leader of the Labor Party.
It took a long time to get past that.
He's also been very
Tony's
quiet about
a
this.
comeback story, if anything. He's still hanging around. He's not going anywhere.
Yeah, that's true. And
Mate, don't call it a comeback. He's been here for years. Tony's going to knock you out.
What do you got, Jace?
Well, it was just Mr. Joyce. I thought and
I got one more
about these latest
I got a few
allegations, but go ahead.
I got Malcolm in New York, in Washington.
Go for it.
Do you know what's funny?
Anything to do with Malcolm?
Yeah. So our vastly ineffectual Prime Minister, who I'm not saying ran from an issue. I'm not saying he ran from the issue, but he did leave the country at a very important time and head to New York to talk to Donald Trump. And what has he done while in America, Frank? Did he offer commentary or guidance after the shooting in Florida?
No, he did not.
He had no comment to make on that.
Didn't he comment on that? Commented on some other things.
Did he comment on the political shit show back home in any large way?
No.
Do you think maybe that's because Donald Trump is on the books as being okay with sexual assault? Grab him by the pussy. This is what I was referring to earlier when I said Malcolm suspiciously not necessarily talking about things. I reckon he was avoiding the issue there because he couldn't fucking say shit.
That sounds plausible. That sounds very plausible.
You know what he did talk about, though?
The desperate need for American leadership in the Pacific?
Well, that and also trickle fucking down economics.
Yeah, that too. You know who likes trickle down? Donald Trump.
The golden type?
Likes trickling
speaking
down his face.
Of being a staunch defender of trickle down economics, 2 weeks ago, and we didn't talk about this, but sort of I've been seeing it on various Twitter feeds, was the case of Emma Alberici's, I'm not going to say attack, but criticism of Malcolm's desperate desire to cut company taxes even more when she put an argument out that considering that 1 in 5 of the major companies operating in Australia
pay no tax. Yeah. That article got pulled off the ABC.
It did.
Do you know who they received emails for right prior to it being pulled?
Malcolm Turnbull went on a waged a campaign.
Scott Morrison and Matthias Cormann.
Yeah, so apparently
that's on the public record. The article was pulled after comment from those
that
three
bastion of the left, the ABC.
Yeah.
There's fucking commie pinko tankies over there.
Yeah.
And Malcolm went forth and tried to argue on conservative radio like 2GB and saying that Emma didn't understand economics and didn't understand the fundamental principle that companies who make losses can use that to write off future taxes against. But what Malcolm didn't address was that companies can manufacture losses for that specific reason.
Yeah, multinational companies in
particular
are doing this and avoiding paying taxes here because they can get cheaper taxation elsewhere.
Yeah, Malcolm didn't address that.
No, I think PricewaterhouseCoopers, his former employer, maybe are engaged in helping people do this.
I'm sure they are. I don't think Malcolm's very aware. I don't want
to. This is just a personal.
You don't want to impugn
suspicion. I'm not making an accusation. I suspect. I may be wrong, but I suspect that they might have a hand helping people do this, and that Malcolm doesn't want to hurt the hand that once fed him, and that once he leaves government will probably once again feed him.
Well, he's got those Panama paper. He was mentioning those Panama papers. He's got his own little accounts offshore.
Oh yeah, but you don't want to wind up like Tony Abbott, right? All washed up and nowhere to go.
It's his rainy day fund.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, what is his motivation really? He doesn't technically. He's a wealthy man, probably not as wealthy as he'd like to be, or has Malcolm has the respect that he must imagine he deserves. So I don't quite understand what his motivation to run quite a boring, ineffectual government. Why does he persist?
I don't know. I think this isn't what he imagined it would be like.
No, he's not the Malcolm Turnbull that Australia loved 10 years ago.
Yeah.
I don't even remember that Malcolm Turnbull.
I do. I was a fan of his.
I was a fan too. And I was hoodwinked.
Oh, you're Obama'd.
I think that Malcolm has developed a taste for defeat over the course of his prime ministership, and a lot of the ideas that were once very important to him are now not so important, and he's okay with that. I imagine. I mean, politics is the art of the compromise, right? It's a matter of what's possible,
Indeed.
not the dream. And I think Malcolm is probably showing that. You know, he's trying to make those compromises the only ones he can, but Australia is disappointed with that. I'm not sure that things would be better off under Tony, but I think that I don't know. I think Malcolm's trying to do what he can, and he can't do any more. And he at least has the respect
the Liberal
to
Party
shut
have
up
an
about
agenda
it.
that is not going to be popular, and he's just not selling it even to his base. So
No, but he's yeah. Look, it's a tough one, isn't it? It's a tough one. I think the Liberal Party, and I think conservative parties around the world in general are a little terrified of the rise of the alt-right. You look at the Republican Party in America that's being somewhat consumed by Tea Party Republicans, and you definitely don't want that sort of thing happening here to the Liberal Party if you're a member of it. Even if you are a member on the right side of the faction, the Christian right, you don't want to have to deal with literal fucking fascist crazies.
well, that's the benefit of ours is the parliamentary system. We've got all these little parties that can drag in those fringe dwellers, and the Liberal Party doesn't really have to take them on board.
Well, no, but I'll tell you who is taking them on board. Our mate Corey.
Well, of course.
Did you see his speech when he announced the South Australian candidacy of the Conservative Party, where he likened Elon Musk to the monorail guy from The Simpsons, and he campaigned on the goal of having a nuclear power industry in South Australia and a nuclear waste dump, because you can't have one without the other.
Can't argue with
Well,
him
you
on that
can.
one.
You can if you send all your nuclear waste to here, then other people can have ones.
Oh no! I think it's brave policy. You know, like I'm pro nuclear power. I am. Corey doesn't have the base for that.
I'm open to the talk of nuclear power. I realise it's problematic in a lot of ways, but I think it is going to be the
I just don't
future
think
in
it's
some way.
necessary anymore.
It totally is.
Not to build new nuclear reactors on the planet at all. It's just not necessary. They've proven they can make it through renewable resources, wind and solar.
You can when there is a sunny day and when there is wind.
Yeah, these are early days, and they're already producing, huge amounts of power. They're managing to accomplish it, and they're not even fully deployed on this kind of technology.
The hassle with the big problem we have in a number of technologies on this planet is batteries. Like, we don't have very efficient batteries is a huge issue that humanity struggles with. Solar, which is a wonderful technology, is very heavily reliant on your ability to store that energy that you get for 3 to 4 hours in the middle of the day.
You're talking about technology that as it exists and is deployed now, but we all know that that's going ahead leaps and bounds, even battery technology. So
battery technology
it's all very well we can talk about nuclear power as it is now, but moving ahead in the future, building
battery
new
tech
reactors
is not advancing as fast as almost anything else we do.
Well, I can also put forward that if we want to fester in mediocrity, yes, renewables are great. But if we actually want to travel the stars, nuclear is the way to go, baby.
I'm with you. I think it's an absolute essential because you have to leave the planet.
I think
nuclear
power being used in space is slightly different to being used on terrestrially.
Yeah, it is. But you want to get all the problems solved and sorted, you know. And when I talk about nuclear power, I'm talking about thorium breeder reactors. I'm not talking about.
Let's all just put a stop to it till we understand what the hell's going on in this nuclear power. Then, hey.
No. Why don't we do that with solar power, Jace? Why don't we put a stop to that till we understand it?
Well, when was
Good
the
old
last
reliable
time?
coal.
When was the last time a tsunami caused a massive exclusion zone because the solar power generator went haywire?
Yesterday. Did you not read the news? Yeah. No. Look, you. I can't argue with that. And I think solar has a very important place. I just think that ideally you need to solve this storage problem or have power generation that doesn't require storage, and nuclear power is that. It just works continuously, and it doesn't need much replacement fuel, and it doesn't really need storage.
No, just create every now and then creates a place that nobody can ever go to for another 1,000 years.
I mean that's human. That's humans causing that, really.
Small price to pay.
The large output of nuclear reactors is steam.
Humans are always there, right? They're always there.
Yeah, they are.
It's interesting you mentioned that Corey's gone on this campaign in South Australia talking about nuclear
33 candidates in the state election.
I know. What he's gone stronger on, though, as I was reading his blog, was attacking renewables outrightly and basically say Australia should be focusing on producing low-cost energy, and we should be tapping into our beautiful, beautiful, low-cost, high-quality coal.
Yeah, coal is not the answer.
According to Corey, it is.
Yeah, I know. I understand that. I understand there are a lot of people. I mean, the big problem, aside from battery tech not being there for renewables, and it is getting better. I'll acknowledge Jason's point. It is getting better, but I still feel it's not there. The big problem is we're looking at something like a 1.8 degree shift in temperatures already. Once we hit 2, which we will inevitably do, all the coral in the ocean dies. It's all going. It will be gone in the next 5 years. There will be no barrier reef. Once you get a little bit warmer than that, the polar ice in the North Pole will melt during summers. There is catastrophic problems to burning carbon. We have to get off it as immediately as we can. I think the time for building nuclear reactors to solve this problem is probably in the past. Like, it's too late to do it. They take too long to get online. But there are, in developing nations and places where they're putting in new power systems, we need to start giving away technology. And I think maybe I would prefer to give people thorium reactors, but maybe Jason would prefer we give them solar plants. I think solar panels take too long to pay off the smelting of the aluminium involved in them, but whatever. It is a conundrum we find ourselves in that I don't want to witness a mass extinction event in low-lying coastal areas. The good news is we probably will live long enough to see that. So.
Well, it'll be exciting, won't it?
No, exciting's a word for it. It's catastrophic. Is a word for it. I mean, Australians don't like refugees right now. Give it another 15 years, they're really going to not like them.
Well, the hope is maybe they'll just outpopulate us and therefore it won't matter.
Yeah, well, yeah.
That'll solve the problem.
Something like 70% of Bangladesh is at risk of being underwater if we don't. We're not going to meet our targets. If we don't change anything, there are fucking hundreds of millions of people that are going to be climate refugees that can't feed themselves. It is going to become a huge, huge issue for our nation and for every nation who maybe is kind of anti-refugee.
It's going to put pressure on everyone.
Well, they're going to. I mean, right now people are anti-refugee because they're suffering quietly in that prison and they've got food and they're on an island. But give it a while and those islands aren't there and we can't feed these people, then they're going to be pretty unhappy with the situation, I imagine. I hope they're unhappy with the situation anyway. Moving on to something happier, maybe.
Did you guys see Trump's responses to the school massacre in Florida?
Yeah, I did.
It's a lot of difficulties navigating that very...
he wants to arm teachers, Frank.
He did. He was suggesting...
Pay them more money if they take that. Can you imagine being a black teacher with a handgun when the SWAT team shows up? Just think about that for a minute, right? Think about how comfortable relations are between African Americans and the police. And you've got teachers with guns.
Not just teachers, Dean. Highly trained, gun adept teachers, coaches. Would solve the problem.
There actually was armed security on site at that Florida shooting that didn't do their job right. And that was their job. They're not a teacher who also has a gun.
Is it? I mean, I saw that being portrayed in the news, but what sort of job? And I'm sure he wasn't paid a lot of money. What sort of person comes up with a job? Here's your job on a very minimum wage, probably very poor training. You're going to charge someone with a machine gun.
But the other thing is, in this case,
ridiculous to contemplate, isn't it?
The guy triggered some smoke bombs that drove people outside and then picked them off as they came outside, right? I'm not sure anyone, armed or not, in that school knew exactly what was going on to the extent that they could head in
I think it's pretty
the right
clear
direction.
with the guy in this case was that he did not enter the building.
Yeah, but
fuck that.
There's a difference between someone setting off smoke bombs and you making a judgment call. Do I take him out? Probably not yet.
Well, what
and
I mean is, I don't even.
Fire and you're like, fuck,
he couldn't have been certain what the situation was at all, whether it was one single shooter or multiple. Or...
No,
I think he did the normal human reaction and panic for someone who's never been in a war zone and never had to deal with such a situation.
I mean, I'm assuming he didn't have anywhere near enough training
No.
to be in that situation. But even if you arm teachers, they're not going to have anywhere near enough training to be in that situation. I don't know. I mean, would it potentially help if you had the right person in the right place at the right time with the firearm? Sure. You got John McClane working as a math teacher? Fine. Yep, that'll work out wonderfully. But for any other run-of-your-mill teacher, when there's, children running around panicking through corridors and you're opening fire with a handgun, best case, no, probably not going to help.
Of course not. Jeez, I wouldn't want to be challenging someone with a machine gun with just a pistol.
I wouldn't be challenging, I'd be firing. I mean, to be honest,
even still,
to
the
be
accuracy
honest,
of a pistol versus a machine gun.
You'd want to be, you'd want to be coming at them from a flank, and you'd want to be aiming to kill.
Yeah, that's assuming you can get a flank position in a school corridor.
And also, bear in mind, you're a teacher. There's a good chance you're in this job because you want to, influence young minds and shape the future, and that's career ending for you, right? Like if you fire at a human being who is a child that you used to teach or who went to school, that's it. You're done. You're out. You might save a bunch of kids, but you're never going to be okay to teach.
In this case in America, where they've been having this gradual debate after, for about a week after every shooting and then forgetting about it, they seem to have been denied every opportunity at regulating some of these guns away or just doing any kind of background checks or anything like that. So the only answer left is to give more guns.
It's not. Well, I mean,
they've been denied any opportunity to reduce or
there is some interesting stuff
meaningful
happening though. I mean, the Florida legislature was talking about putting in state regulations to deal with this. They were talking about banning bump stocks.
They were talking about it, and they knocked it back. They voted and knocked it back.
Didn't they? Boo. They had great hope that they would succeed in that.
So,
and the NRA themselves were coming out
when every option is being taken away from you to control these guns or anything, the only other option is to give them more guns.
Yeah.
Do you see Marco Rubio do a town hall?
Marco Rubio's fairly pro-gun, isn't he?
Sorry?
He's fairly pro-gun, isn't he?
Oh, very good. He takes donations from the NRA, and one of the survivors from the school asked him, "Would you make a pledge now not to take any more funds from the NRA?" And being the adept politician he is, he turned it around saying, I have a program and I'm willing to accept donations from anyone that supports my program. So he pretty much switched the angle of the question around, so he didn't have to address taking funds from the NRA.
I mean, when it comes down to it, though, as a politician, there are certain things you want to achieve. And then there is everything else that's important in life. And if you want to achieve those 2-3 things, you may have to compromise on some other stuff. Now, compromising on the lives of students and children, pretty big ask. But I can understand why a politician would say, look, if this 300 grand I'm getting or whatever it is the difference between me getting these key programs through or not, I'm taking the money. I don't agree with him, but I could see why they would potentially do that.
I can understand why he does it. It's not even the money; it would be the negative ad campaigns the NRA would run against.
It's 300 grand going, or whatever he's being paid. It's going to the other guy.
Yeah.
So you get a deficit. So
it's a problem
but the NRA,
system,
although they're one of the biggest lobby groups, still isn't all that big.
It's not, and it's funny how much power they control, considering they're not that big.
Yeah, they're really. I mean, you look at like major multinational companies that give political donations; they vastly eclipse the NRA's money. So some of this probably comes down to, it's a question of leadership, but I don't know what the answer is. I don't think America's going to change.
Nope.
I think it's a little bit in their DNA.
Definitely.
I am to this day I remain surprised that it was a Liberal Prime Minister that managed to get through gun control in Australia. And, hopefully it doesn't get rolled back, but give it time.
Well, you got to remember, in the US, there will come a flashpoint when it'll work, because sensible gun control, and they've been polling it for a long time, is supported by like 80% of the population. And eventually that weight of support will win through. It's just however long these companies can keep paying off these politicians.
Yeah, but when you look at them...
It's not just the companies, Jason. That small percentage, 20-30% that does support, uncontrolled gun purchases are very vocal, And,
And they have guns.
That is their one issue.
And they have guns.
And, well, even forgetting whether they have guns or not, that is their one issue, and they focus on it intensely.
Well, and
you know, for people on the opposite side, gun control isn't their main issue. Yes, when they consider gun control, they think we should have it, but you know, they have 5, 10 issues they have on their table that they're considering, and gun control probably isn't at the top. Whereas gun nuts, you know, rolling back any form of gun control is their number one concern.
Yeah, and I saw an interesting infographic which showed something like about 45% of the Republican members of the House take money from the NRA.
Yeah.
So it will be very hard to get it through it'd be very hard to get through a Republican-controlled House. And even when the Republicans don't 100% control the House, it's still very hard to get it through. Because it is a very key issue to the Republican Party, protecting that, because enough of them, nearly half, are on board with protecting that amendment. So,
well, the thing is, the opposition don't even argue the point, because it's not necessarily, they don't have to.
Well, you got to understand that
they don't have to sell it as breaking an amendment. It's just they're just talking about sensible gun control, but they never enter that argument.
I hear you, but right,
they never take that forward.
Imagine this, right? You've got the First Amendment, right to say whatever the fuck you want. Take away the Second Amendment, right to back that up with a firearm. Whew, all of a sudden, that First Amendment's under threat too.
But even you're making that mistake of classing it as a.
Well, I'm taking the piss. But if I was like, get off my lawn, versus get off my lawn, aiming a shotgun, motherfucker's getting off the lawn in the second case. First time,
you've got the
maybe
right
not.
wing the right wing is saying that it's gonna completely contravene the Second Amendment, when the left wing isn't making the argument that no, it's not doing that at all. We're just talking about gun regulation.
It is. Though,
you know what I mean? They're not making that argument. They never enter into that argument.
But
they
hassle,
cede the ground to the.
The hassle is
that
the Second Amendment is pretty simple in that, you know, it's the right to bear arms.
Simple and vague.
Yeah, it is non-specific.
It's vague enough to be not so simple.
You think that?
It's very
a large number of Democrat politicians clearly don't back you up on that.
The whole well-regulated militia language just because it doesn't suit them.
Yeah, I'm with you. I hear you. I don't think they're going to change. I think that they could definitely do with, firmer checks like we have, where the police will come and inspect your premises to make sure the guns are being stored securely, the ammunition is being kept separate, nothing's being left in a position where it could be stolen or borrowed or taken by kids. But even that seems like a bridge too far a lot of the time for them.
Well, too far for the gun manufacturers. I don't think individuals care too much on that level, but gun manufacturers.
I think enough of the gun nuts do care enough to not let the police on their land to inspect their property.
Oh, true.
I mean that is a little bit of a fascist state thing. When I can see why gun nut Americans would be like, no, you can't come onto my property. It's private property. Back off. I don't know. One other transitioning from just sad story to sad story, really, aren't we? Did you guys see that the Mexican president
Nieto?
Yep. Enrique Pena Nieto.
Yep.
Yeah. He has cancelled his trip to Washington next month because he had a phone call disagreement with Donald Trump about the Donald Trump continually saying Mexico will pay for the wall, and Nieto was like, "Dude, you got to stop saying that. We both know it ain't going to happen." And apparently Trump lost his temper because he couldn't really go back on what is a very popular media slogan.
That was the key part of his campaign.
Doesn't want to be seen to be publicly admitting that, yeah, you're never going to have to pay for it. Perfectly happy to privately admit, don't worry about it, you're never going to have to pay for it. But publicly can't be seen doing it. So Nieto is not going.
I love how flexible the Trump base is on that point. You know, as long as Trump doesn't say Mexicans aren't going to pay it, everything else can pretty much insinuate that is the case. But as long as Trump doesn't say that's the case, they're okay with it. Yep. Even though Trump's gone to Congress and said, you've got to stump up the cash for it. Not multiple times.
So that's Trump's gift, is plausible deniability for his base. Gives him just enough.
Wow, yeah.
I think, though, if you were a redneck, Mexican-hating, semi-racist person and they were building a wall to keep Mexicans out, even if Americans had to pay for it, I think that would be enough. You'd be like, it's fine.
Well, that is, without a doubt, that's the reality of the situation.
Yeah, like, I personally think it's a terrible idea, but it's a terrible idea because it's a lot of money to spend on a border that you're not able to fully secure anyway. Like with what Trump's proposing, it doesn't cover everything. It's not going to be enough. People can still sneak across. Fuck, you can't even stop people smuggling drugs over the border. You're never going to stop them smuggling people. But I can see the situation where the people who are in favor of this are like, you know what, I don't care as long as he does something about this.
Yeah.
Which I think he will be doing. I think it is interesting to watch America's relations with their northern and southern neighbors fall apart. And I think it's interesting that Malcolm, the other man who had a disagreement with Donald Trump on the phone call that we know about, fully fronted up and prepared to suck American dick.
I love the way the right in America, go on about having to build the wall to stop the drug trade, as if it's a push issue. It's a pull issue.
Yeah, it is. And I mean, they've seized submarines in the past.
Yeah,
you're not gonna a wall ain't gonna do it.
No, they'll find another way.
Ain't gonna do it. And there's just way too much money involved. People fly it in by plane. They bring it in. No, you're not gonna stop them.
You've got to address the demand, not the supply.
Yeah,
and the demand ain't going away.
Yeah. So, I mean, look, I guess we'll see. But I can see that, I concede that while I don't agree with Donald or his supporters on this, I don't think it matters who pays for it.
No.
At the end of the day, long as that policy stays on the books.
It never did. But basically, at the campaigning level, the Democrats couldn't attack him effectively on who would pay for it when he was saying the Mexicans will. Even though it was never a reality that the Mexicans would.
Yeah, and also, it just seemed like you're squibbling over coppers at that point.
Yeah.
Rather than say that wall is a terrible idea, which they didn't say.
No.
They're like, well, the Mexicans won't pay for that. And then it's like, what? So you support the wall, you just worry about who's going to pay for it? That's your big disagreement with this? Like, it was a terrible retort on their part, but I think they were in a no-win situation on that. Don't know. I'm out of stories now. That's me covered, actually.
And I have to bounce, so...
Oh, well, let's call it a show.
You fucking phoned in.
Yeah, I know.
It's not like you have to get away somewhere. You're already somewhere.
I'm at home is where I'm at, but I need to be elsewhere.
Okay.
Fair enough. We'll dive deeper into this next week.
Yeah. Are you gonna front up to the studio next week, or are we just gonna be like?
I don't know. This is quite comfortable.
From now on, if we do go to the everyone Google Hangouting in, we should work on actually broadcasting video.
That's what I mean. Yeah, because that's what I was thinking I could do with Skype, obviously, but with Google Hangouts you could do the screen share as well. So
yeah, I mean there's other software we can set up to do it, but
yep.
We'll
have remote producers in every.
There's a bunch of podcasts I enjoy that do like video conferencing chit chat about various things, which works really well.
Oh, we'll have to give that a go.
Why not? They're hearing about all sorts of stuff. It's behind baseball.
All right, Ashay, thank you for listening. Cutting the stream out now.